posts all over Scotland, with people being charged every time they crossed a city boundary or a council boundary anywhere in Scotland. This would be a disaster for the economy and a completely unrealistic and unfair burden on motorists.
Cabinet Secretary.
So my understanding was that the Conservatives wanted to have more decentralisation and more powers for council, but obviously he now
wants the Cabinet Secretary.
He wants me to step in on an issue that should best be resolved between East Renfrewshire Council and Glasgow Council. Now, I would remind the member that there is existing legislation. It goes back to 2001 from the Labour and then Labour executive for the road user charging powers. It's up to local authorities to make decisions. They want to manage their own road space, they want to manage their own maintenance, they want to manage their own congestion. And if he doesn't believe that local authorities should be in charge of their own authorities, then perhaps there's more divisions in the Conservative parties than we even realised.
Question number 7, Mark Ruskell.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the proposed ferry route between Rosyth and Dunkirk.
Minister Jim Fairley.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Government continues to support the development of our ports and the potential for a new direct freight and passenger ferry service linking Scotland to Europe. Ministers and officials have met with the sponsors on a number of occasions regarding their proposal to introduce a new ferry route between Rosyth and Dunkirk. The Scottish Government is continuing to engage with the sponsors on a variety of issues. But as the member is aware, an obstacle is the border control post requirements which were brought in due to the UK exiting the EU. Now, whilst the Scottish Government welcomes the recent announcement of an outline SPS agreement between the UK and the EU, until an agreement is finalised, it is impossible for the Scottish Government to provide certainty about the future border control post requirements. But officials are continuing to discuss these and other matters with the sponsors.
Mark Ruskell.
Can I thank the Minister for that response? But he'll be aware that before the summer recess, the First Minister gave assurances that his government would welcome the ferry route and would do everything that we can to remove any obstacles that are in the way. But 4 months on, the biggest barrier remains the border control post designation. I believe that that is resolvable. The ferry is a significant opportunity for the local community, the Scottish economy and for our connection to Europe. So can I ask the Minister, how will the Government support the delivery of this ferry in the coming months? Because time is ticking away. We will lose this ferry. We will lose this direct connection to Europe. We cannot afford to lose this opportunity. And I think the First Minister knows that as well.
Minister.
Mark Ruskell makes very light of border control posts. I think he should not be making very light of border control posts because of the job that they actually do for preserving Scotland's preserving our public health and animal health. But the Scottish Government remains absolutely convinced that Scotland's future is best served by being in the EU, and we remain committed to seeking to achieve that. Improving our transport and trade links with the European mainland is arguably even more important and has even more resonance after the UK's damaging exit from the EU. But while the Scottish Government welcomes the recent announcements of the SPS agreement between the UK and the EU, until an agreement is finalised, it is not possible to confirm what future border control post requirements will be, and the Scottish Government officials are continuing to liaise with the sponsor, and I have asked for a meeting directly with the sponsor myself.
Thank you. That concludes general questions. The next item of business is First Minister's questions. At question number 1, I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. John Swinney yesterday launched yet another taxpayer-funded paper on independence, and he's called it a fresh start.
Let's hear Mr Finlay. Let's hear Mr Finlay.
They won't be clapping in a minute. The same John Swinney has dreamed about breaking up the United Kingdom for almost 50 years. He was at the forefront of the Free by 93 campaign. He first became leader of the SNP at the turn of the millennium. In 2014, he played a crucial role in the losing Yes campaign. Thank you, John. And last year, he became SNP leader again. And he really thinks it's plausible to describe his latest independence paper as a fresh start. Is John Swinney having a laugh?
Full names at all times, please. First Minister.
Presiding Officer, before I respond to Mr Finlay, I want to take a moment to welcome the news that Israel and Hamas have agreed the first phase of a peace plan for Gaza. I call on all sides to abide by the terms of the agreement, the release of all hostages and the immediate entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza. After more than 2 years of devastating brutality and loss of life, I know that this will be a moment of relief for many here in Scotland and around the world. I reiterate my call that Palestinians and Israelis must be able to live safely, side by side, based on a two-state solution, and I dearly hope this is the first step towards that outcome, and I express my thanks to all of the mediators who have worked so hard to create this moment and this opportunity for peace. In relation to Mr Finlay's substantive question, I am deadly serious about the arguments for Scottish independence. As a country, we have exercised self-government since 1999 with the establishment of this Parliament, and a number of significant benefits have been achieved for the people of Scotland, some delivered by the previous government, such as the ban on smoking in public places or the introduction of free personal care. Some of them delivered by my government, whether that's about the abolition of tuition fees or minimum unit pricing of alcohol or the introduction of the Scottish Child Payment. But we are at a moment now in Scotland where the rightward drift of the United Kingdom and the stagnation of living standards in our country demonstrate a re-examine of this argument, and that's why independence is the fresh start that Scotland needs.
Russell Finlay.
I think the fact he says he's deadly serious is actually even more worrying than if he was just having a laugh. John Swinney can't offer a fresh start because he's been in the SNP government for almost 20 years. He was Nicola Sturgeon and Alex Salmond's right-hand man, up to his neck in every SNP scandal. Ferries, gender self-ID, SQA exams, named persons and many more. He ran down Scotland's economy, and then he ran down Scotland's education system. And a new survey shows that public trust in the Scottish Government is at an all-time low. And this was a Scottish Government survey. So does John Swinney accept that this is a damning judgment on his dismal record?
First Minister.
What my government is focused on is improving the lives of people in Scotland. That's why we are keeping prescriptions free in Scotland, while they're nearly £10 under Labour in England. It's why we're protecting free tuition in Scotland, while they're rising south of the border. It's why we've expanded early learning and childcare. It's why we've extended free school meals. It's why we've introduced the Scottish Child Payment. It's why we abolished peak rail fares on our railways for good, because we are interested in providing practical support to improve the lives of people in Scotland, and we will continue to do so. I noticed in the survey that Mr Finlay is talking about that there's also a question on independence. It indicates that support for independence is at 47%, up from 27% in 1999. I can see the direction of travel in Scotland, and it's going to independence.
Russell Finlay.
Nicola Sturgeon's book should be in the fiction section, but John Swinney's paper really should be in the fantasy section. And it's not just harmless fantasy, Presiding Officer, but actually dangerous dishonesty. Because this graph here says that Scotland's GDP has grown faster than the rest of the UK, when the opposite is true. Serious and credible experts have demolished this 90-page exercise in wishful thinking. Leading economist Professor Ronald MacDonald said John Swinney's plans are, I quote, totally shambolic and would have a, again quoting, devastating effect. That's the reality. He expressed astonishment at the quote, again quote, total ignorance of the SNP's currency position. Damningly, he said all of this will impact on public sector wages, pensions, mortgages, borrowing costs for homes and
Let's hear
businesses.
Mr Finlay.
This is a paper with no solutions. It does nothing to help people's lives here and now. It's an outrage that it was produced by Scottish civil servants. So will John Swinney stop wasting any more taxpayers' money on such nonsense?
First Minister.
President Officer, under the SNP government, GDP per person in Scotland has grown by 10.3% compared to 6.1% in the UK, while productivity has grown at an average rate of 1.1% per year in Scotland compared to the UK average of 0.4%. So that demonstrates that the point that Mr Finlay has put to Parliament is
hear the First Minister.
Is not correct. Now, the issue that Mr Finlay has got to address is that the arguments that he puts forward to preserve the status quo are now completely and utterly threadbare. Labour and Tory politicians said that staying in the United Kingdom would lower our bills, but the opposite has been the case. They promised financial security, but gave us the Liz Truss mini-budget. They assured us that voting no was the surest way for Scotland to remain in the European Union, but Scotland has been taken out against our will. The arguments against Scottish independence have collapsed since 2014, and Scotland is on a pathway to independence.
Russell Finlay.
John Swinney's graph on GDP is wrong, just like his stats last week on income tax were wrong. And if he ever got his way, it would mean extreme tax rises and severe spending cuts for Scotland. Mortgages up, pensions at risk and a hard border with England. Scotland would be divided, smaller and weaker. And despite all of this, John Swinney keeps obsessing about independence, which would make Scots poorer. No wonder public trust in the SNP is at an all-time low. John Swinney is not a fresh start. This man is not a fresh start. He's a tired nationalist with a dismal record. He's not focused on building a strong economy for the future. He's wasting time and taxpayers' money on the same old arguments of the past. So for the sake of Scotland, is he ever going to give up on his independence obsession and move on?
First Minister.
I think it's pretty clear, I think, to any member of the public watching this exchange, that the more Russell Finlay gets personally insulting to his political rivals, the weaker his arguments become. Because what I've marshalled in front of Parliament today is the evidence. Living standards are stagnating in Scotland, and they have stagnated for 15 years.
First Minister, sorry, it's becoming increasingly difficult to hear one another. If members haven't been called to speak, please resist the temptation to do so. Those gathered in the gallery, I am sure, would wish to hear contributions. First Minister.
Presiding Officer, living standards in Scotland as part of the United Kingdom have ground to a halt. Brexit has been a disaster. The implications of the Liz Truss mini-budget have wreaked economic difficulty and havoc on the people of the United Kingdom, and Scotland has been saddled with that despite the promises of lower prices, lower bills and access to the European Union from the No campaign in 2014. I am very proud to lead a campaign which is about focusing on improving living standards in Scotland, transforming the lives of people in Scotland, and will do that through independence.
Question number 2, Anna Sarwar.
Can I firstly welcome the agreement on a Gaza ceasefire, the end of the bloodshed and the release of hostages. This must be real and it needs to last, but it must be backed up by an urgent surge in aid into Gaza and a meaningful pathway to an end of the illegal occupation and a lasting peace where every life, Palestinian or Israeli, is treated as equal. Today we will vote on the Right to Recovery Bill, and we will support it at stage 1. 6 years ago, the SNP declared a drugs deaths emergency, and 6 years on, lives are still being lost, families are still grieving, and a generation has been failed. In just the first 6 months of this year, 607 people died from suspected drug overdoses. 1 life lost every 7 hours. And when it comes to recovery, the picture is just as bleak. the SNP haven't delivered the promised rehabilitation beds. But even more shamefully, 77% of areas report being unable to access rehab spaces because they don't have the money they need from the SNP government. Rehab beds lying empty in the middle of a drugs deaths emergency. So can I ask John Swinney, why 6 years into this emergency are beds being left empty and Scots not getting the treatment they need to recover?
First Minister.
President, I recognise the importance of the issues in relation to drugs support for individuals and the necessity of us delivering on the commitments that we have made as part of the programme. In relation to the specific issue that Mr Sarwar raises with me, we set out a commitment to establish 1,000 publicly funded placements per year by 25-26, and the most recent Public Health Scotland publication shows that there were 984 confirmed records of individuals starting a publicly funded residential rehab placement in 2022-23. Now, we've made £38 million available between 8 projects across Scotland to provide additional residential rehabilitation beds. And the latest published figures report a rise in capacity of 88 beds to a total of 513 in September 2024. And there has been further expansion since then. So what I assure Mr Sarwar about is, first of all, the importance of this endeavour, and secondly, the practical steps being taken to implement the commitments that we have given, and we will continue to do so.
Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, the promises have not been met, and the families left behind deserve justice, not excuses. Shamefully, new figures show that 573 charges for drug dealing had to be dropped in the last 3 years because the cases were time-barred before reaching court. Hundreds of those accused of drug dealing simply walking free, evading justice, not because they were found innocent, but because of this government's incompetence. People selling poison to their communities given the green light to destroy lives because John Swinney and his tired government can't run a court system that sends drug dealers to prison. 573 drug-dealing charges simply dropped. So can John Swinney understand why people will be so angry when they learn that despite one life being lost to drugs every 7 hours in Scotland, hundreds of drug dealers are walking free?
First Minister.
President Officer, the issues in relation to the court service are essentially an implication of the period during COVID in which we had a backlog of cases that had to be addressed. And the court service worked incredibly hard and works incredibly hard to erode those backlogs that we are wrestling with. And significant work has been undertaken because, if I then look at other data, our prisons, as the Justice Secretary reported to Parliament last Thursday, our prisons are incredibly congested, and in many cases by individuals who have been convicted and sentenced for a long period of time as a consequence of their drug-related activities. And we are wrestling within our prison system, admirably by the Scottish Prison Service, with the congestion of many groups that are involved in organised crime, which is underpinning the drugs issue. So I know that the Crown and the Scottish Courts and Tribunal Service are working incredibly hard in an incredibly focused way to make sure that the perpetrators of illegal drug activity in our society are brought to justice, and many of them are.
Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, there is no justification for hundreds of drug dealers walking free because of the incompetence of this SNP government. No justification at all. Because this is a government that has lost control. 607 lives lost in just 6 months, 1 every 7 hours, and 573 drug supply charges unpunished. And still not enough access to treatment or residential rehab for those who want to recover. The truth is, John Swinney's approach is failing both victims and communities. Dealers slipping through the cracks, people dying waiting for help, and families losing loved ones and left without hope. 6 years ago, 6 years since they declared an emergency, and still Scotland leads Europe in drugs deaths. John Swinney has abandoned both justice and recovery. So isn't it the case that we will never get to grips with Scotland's drugs deaths emergency while he and the SNP stay in charge?
First Minister.
President Officer, the Government has taken a focused approach to addressing the drugs issue in our society over a number of years, and a number of significant steps have been taken to address those questions. First of all, I've put on the record the issues around about the expansion of rehabilitation placements, and that progress is being achieved as we committed to doing so. We supported the delivery of the first of the safe consumption rooms, which we know, based on the evidence that is available to us, has saved lives as a consequence of the intervention of the thistle. We have expanded the rollout of naloxone, which is resulting in significant avoidance of death and injury to individuals who are using drugs. And in addition to that, we are seeing, and I recognise that the levels of drug deaths are far too high, but we are seeing a decrease in the last year of 13% in drugs deaths in Scotland, although we must maintain absolute vigilance and focus to make sure that we continue to make that progress. And finally, on the issue of the criminal justice system, our prison system is absolutely full of individuals, many of whom have been imprisoned because of their drug-related activity. So it is quite simply wrong for Mr Sarwar to suggest that people are not being brought to justice because of their criminal activity, and that will remain the focused priority of the Scottish Government.
Question number 3, Alex Cole-Hamilton.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Can I associate myself entirely with the First Minister's remarks about progress towards peace in the Middle East? Can I also take a moment to offer the sincere thanks of the Scottish Liberal Democrats for the life and work of Sir Ming Campbell, who was lost to us last week. Ming was a titan of British politics. He commanded respect in the Parliament in which he served and in homes across this country. He was a mentor and friend to so many in my party, and we miss him. I offer condolences to his family at this difficult time. Presiding Officer, when companies generate renewable energy, they're expected to give money back to the local community. But the amount of cash we're talking about here is absolutely pitiful, because the rules haven't changed in more than a decade. All the while, people are still shivering in the shadow of turbines, unable to heat their homes. So will the Scottish Government listen to the Liberal Democrats, to Highland Council, to Shetland Council, and change those rules to cut energy bills for local people?
First Minister.
President, first of all, can I thank Mr Cole-Hamilton for his words, as I thank Mr Sarwar for his words on the situation in Gaza, and also associate myself with his remarks about Mingus Campbell, Lord Campbell of Pittenweem. I was warmly and fondly welcomed into the House of Commons by Ming Campbell in 1997 and enjoyed far too many uproariously funny conversations with Ming and his late wife Elspeth, who were always wonderful company. And I convey to the Liberal Democrats, as I have conveyed privately, my appreciation and my sympathy as they wrestle with the loss of a giant of the Liberal Democrat movement. In relation to the substantive question on renewable energy, I actually have a lot of sympathy with Mr Cole-Hamilton's point. The issue of community benefits arising out of wind farm developments is regulated by the United Kingdom Government, and we have been pressing for some time to mandate community benefits from mature onshore renewable technologies and to create greater benefit for communities, particularly in relation to the reduction of fuel bills. So I'm sympathetic to his point, but it's an issue that the Government continues to press the UK Government on, and we will continue to do so.
Alex Cole-Hamilton.
But you can't dodge this entirely. Some of this lies with his government too. Yesterday I was in North Edinburgh with Ed Davey and Councillor Sanna Dixter-Downey. We met at Edinburgh College apprentices who are being trained for good green jobs, installing home insulation, solar panels and heat pumps, technologies that are ready to go, and at the heart of Liberal Democrats' realistic plan to halve household energy bills by 2035. John Swinney's own independent advisers now say his government is extremely unlikely to meet its fuel poverty target. They found people catching hypothermia in their own homes, missing meals to top up the meter, burning their own floorboards for fuel. The Scottish Government's consultation on the amount energy companies give back closed 6 months ago, but nothing's changed. Under Liberal Democrat proposals, there are millions of pounds out there that could warm homes across Scotland. So when will the First Minister change those rules?
First Minister.
Well, the issues are essentially the existing arrangements which are specified by the United Kingdom Government are non-mandatory. So, as a consequence, there is a limit. It's actually one of the examples of the constitutional point that I make. I'm very sympathetic, but I can't exercise powers that legally I'm not entitled to exercise. That's actually one of the limitations of the constitutional arrangements. So I'm absolutely with Mr Cole-Hamilton in wanting to use the energy wealth of Scotland, which is absolutely beyond dispute. We all agree about that. I'm absolutely with him on the desire to eradicate fuel poverty. I spent some time in the island of Yell in Shetland earlier on in the summer, where I saw an excellent example of a community wind farm which is creating real benefit in the locality, owned by the community. So these models can be delivered where there is community ownership, and we have, and the Scottish Government enabled that development to be undertaken in the island of Yell. But I then went to the main island in Shetland and saw a colossal wind farm, the Viking Energy project, which is not delivering the right level of benefit to the community, nor is it eradicating fuel poverty, where people in Shetland are living cheek by jowl with one of the largest wind farms in Europe and paying the highest levels of fuel bill and also living in fuel poverty. So the powers to arrest that do not rest in this Parliament. They rest with the UK Government, and I'm determined and very keen to work with Mr Cole-Hamilton to get those powers here so that we can do something about it for the people of Shetland and the people of West Edinburgh.
Question number 4, Claire Adamson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what assessment the Scottish Government has made of any implications for its work to mitigate the two-child benefit cap of the UK Government's reported proposals to replace the cap with a tapered system.
First Minister.
President Officer, I have obviously seen the press speculation to which Ms Adamson refers. It's important that the UK Government lets us know as soon as possible about any plans they may have, because, as Ms Adamson will know, the Scottish Government is pressing ahead with our own measures to abolish the two-child limit, which should have been undertaken as one of the first acts of the Labour Government. And the Scottish Fiscal Commission estimates that 43,000 children in Scotland would benefit from the Scottish Government's two-child limit payment, and Scottish Government modelling shows that 20,000 children will be kept out of relative poverty as a result.
Claire Adamson.
I thank the First Minister for his answer. In hearing these murmurings, it was not surprising to find out that Labour is now backpedalling on these plans. With a record 4.5 million children living in poverty under the Labour Government, plans to introduce a tapered system is nowhere good enough. Can the First Minister join me in calling for the UK Government to reconsider this short-sighted proposal and instead follow the Scottish Government's lead, dump the cap and dump the so-called rape clause?
First Minister.
I very much associate myself with the comments that Claire Adamson has made. The Scottish Government is taking measures which are resulting in a reduction in child poverty in Scotland, but all of the estimates that we see is as a consequence of the actions of the Labour Government, particularly in welfare reform, there is likely to be a rise in child poverty across the rest of the United Kingdom, and of course across the rest of the United Kingdom child poverty is rising. So I make the plea today, as I have made it on many other occasions, for the Labour Government to recognise the absolute imperative of eradicating child poverty, take the measures to lift the two-child cap, and then enable the Scottish Government to use the resources that we are doing to mitigate another Westminster decision that is bad for Scotland, to take other measures to eradicate child poverty in Scotland.
Question number 5, Brian Whittle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what the Scottish Government's response is to reports that the mental health budget has been reduced in the 25-26 autumn budget revision.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the budget remains as originally published at £270.5 million.
Brian Whittle.
Can I thank the First Minister for that answer? But the situation speaks to a wider problem across health and social care, namely that it is verging on impossible to follow the path from a Scottish Government spending commitment to the frontline support it is intended to provide. Audit Scotland and the Fraser of Allender Institute have repeatedly warned that the complex and convoluted methods used by the Scottish Government are barriers to effective public scrutiny, and now we have organisations directly impacted by this funding seemingly unable to determine how or even if that money that was promised will reach them. Presiding Officer, as Scotland's Mental Health Partnership said themselves, transparency is essential. Now, the First Minister might be able to explain where these tens of millions of pounds of public money are when he has a briefing note in front of him, but how does he expect the public, the organisations who rely on it and those who scrutinise the Government to do the same?
First Minister.
Well, I think the transparency and the clarity was in my original answer. The budget remains as originally published at £270.5 million. And I say I understand the importance of this issue and the significance that Mr Whittle attaches to all of this. But I simply make the observation that it's interesting that Mr Whittle is interested in the budget of £270.5 million for mental health support, but he wasn't interested enough to vote for it when the budget came to Parliament. And it's all very well coming here complaining about budgets, but people have got to vote for them to be spent in the community in the first place.
Absolutely. Paul Swinney.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Dr Pavan Shreddy, Vice-Chairman of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, has described the autism and ADHD waiting time scandal as a public health emergency. So will the Scottish Government fulfil its commitment to expend 10% of the NHS budget on mental health by the end of this Parliament, so that those trapped on the waiting lists will have some reassurance that they will get the support they need?
First Minister.
The Government is on track to fulfil that commitment.
Thank you. Question number 6, Michael Matheson.
To ask the First Minister, following Scotland's Global Investment Summit 2025, whether he will provide an update on the Scottish Government's work to attract international investment into Scotland's economy.
First Minister.
So Scotland is a nation which is extremely attractive to investors due to our skilled workforce, world-leading universities, a strong presence in skilled workforce in sectors like energy and a supportive business environment. That is why we have been ranked as the top destination for foreign direct investment outside of London and the South East for the last 10 consecutive years. This work is led by the Deputy First Minister, who has been actively engaged, as I have been, in the Global Investment Summit which took place in Edinburgh this week.
Michael Matheson.
Scotland's record has been consistently good in attracting direct foreign investment into Scotland. Last year alone, it attracted 135 projects and is ranked the 6th most attractive location in the top 10 locations in Europe for foreign direct investment. The First Minister, though, will recognise that critical to delivering a just transition, we need to make sure that we attract energy manufacturing capacity here to Scotland to support us in the building out of our renewables. Can I therefore ask the First Minister what specific action has been taken in order to ensure that we attract that type of investment to create the jobs that we're looking to do here in the Scottish economy?
First Minister.
A number of steps have been taken, particularly in relation to the strengthening of the scoping and consenting arrangements for particularly offshore renewables projects, and the Government is now very focused on taking those decisions. We obviously work very closely with the United Kingdom Government and press the arguments, particularly with GB Energy, for there to be, and also with the, those responsible for the national grid, to ensure that there is connectivity for these projects so that the supply chain can have confidence in making its investment decisions. Now, of course, there are a number of developments that have taken their course, Sumitomo at Nig or the developments at Ardésir, which are very strong indications of good foundations for the supply chain. But we need every step of that journey to be undertaken to give us confidence in attracting investment, and the Scottish Government is focused on making sure that's the case.
Craig Hoy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In a week when John Swinney released yet another taxpayer-funded fantasy pamphlet on independence, the City of London Corporation stood shoulder to shoulder with Scotland to unlock new opportunities for growth. But two areas where this SNP government has effectively scuppered future inward investment are nuclear energy and oil and gas exploration, both of which are vital to our energy security and our economic security. So now freed from the shackles of the extremist Greens, why doesn't John Swinney do the right thing by the Scottish economy and commit to fully drilling the North Sea and ending his government's student union politics on nuclear energy in Scotland?
First Minister.
Well, we'll make our policy choices, and on the nuclear question, I've made a policy choice that I want to make sure that Scotland's natural and sustainable sources of energy are the ones that we should develop, because that's better for our people and our planet, and I'm very proud to defend that in this Parliament today. And then secondly, on the question of the oil and gas sector, I really think it is the shiniest of brass necks imaginable for Craig Hoy to indicate to me that there is an issue about, on the question of oil and gas activity, because the Conservative government that he supported presided over a punitive tax regime on the energy profits levy, which is recognised by every commentator to be the biggest impediment to the security of the North Sea oil and gas sector. And Mr Hoy should face up to the realities of the dreadful decisions that the last Conservative government made.
Thank you. We move to constituency and general supplementaries, and I call Emma Harper.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, the General Secretary of the RCN said health and care services would cease to function without migrant nursing staff. Does the First Minister agree with this statement, and will he outline what assessment his government has made of the impact of the Labour government's new immigration rules on vital essential workers in Scotland's NHS?
First Minister.
I think the General Secretary of the Royal College of Nursing has given a very silent warning to all of us about the welcome that has to be extended to staff from other countries to come and work in our National Health Service. In the year ending June 2025, the number of health and care worker visas issued to nursing professionals fell by 80%. 80%. Now, that is going to have a damaging effect on the operation of our National Health Service. We all know there are challenges about the size of our working age population, and we need to have an appropriate skilled worker visa route which works in the interest of the National Health Service, and that's one of the reasons why having control of these issues in Scotland will be better for the people of Scotland.
Absolutely. Alexander Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, a recent report has uncovered that NHS patients in my region and across Scotland were forced to receive electronic shock treatment against their will almost 1,100 times last year. And in around 2,000 cases out of 4,000, this outdated procedure was performed on people who, because of their mental state, were deemed incapable of giving consent. So what action can the Scottish Government put in place to ensure that vulnerable patients are protected from receiving this ethically unacceptable procedure?
First Minister.
I will take away, if Mr Stewart would like to write to me with the details, I'll explore that in more detail. His issue merits a deeper answer than I can offer him at this particular stage. My first reaction would be that such judgments have to be made on the basis of clinical opinion, but obviously he raises a wider and more significant question which I would rather have the opportunity to explore, and if he would care to write to me, I'll give him a substantive response.
Thank you. Martin Whitfield.
I'm very grateful, Presiding Officer. A report published yesterday, Improving Care Experience Delivering the Promise, by the Accounts Commission and Auditor General, concluded, from the outset, there was no assessment of what resources and skills were needed to deliver the promise by 2030, or how success would be defined or measured. First Minister, who should take responsibility for that failure?
First Minister.
As Mr Whitfield knows, I take responsibility for everything here. I'm the First Minister of Scotland. I don't dodge that for a moment. And we gave a commitment as a government to honour the promise. And in terms of the definition of success, I'm a wee bit mystified by that point in the Audit Scotland report. It's pretty clear what the promise has got to achieve by 2030, and we are making progress in that respect. I think I understand the interest of Mr Whitfield in this question, but there has been substantive progress made. For example, we have now we've taken action to ensure that no young people under 18 are admitted to young offenders institutes. We have fewer children in Scotland growing up in care since 2020, a reduction of 18.1%. Incidents of physical restraint and seclusion are declining in children's residential accommodation, and more people with care experience are going on to positive destinations 9 months after leaving school. Now, I acknowledge that there is more work to be done in this respect. The work has been taken forward very effectively by the Minister responsible, Natalie Dawn-Innes. She has my full support, and we of course have legislation that Parliament can scrutinise on this issue that will be dealt with by Parliament before the close of the parliamentary session.
Michelle Thompson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The latest Scottish Chamber of Commerce quarterly economic indicator survey published this morning shows 7 out of 10 Scottish firms continue to struggle with higher employment costs and have concerns about further potential adverse policies arising from the UK Labour Government. Has the Scottish Government had the chance to assess the impact of these increased national insurance contributions for employers in Scotland, a tax on Scottish businesses? And if so, what are their findings?
First Minister.
President, this is a serious issue because it has reduced the competitiveness and opportunities for growth within the Scottish economy. The Government's analysis shows that the changes could cost employers in Scotland over £1.7 billion, and the cost to public services are of the order of over £500 million. Now, this indicates a significant burden that is being carried by business within Scotland and, as a consequence, is an inhibitor of growth. And it is beyond me why a government that apparently supports economic growth is taking such a measure. It's another example of why we should take decisions here in Scotland on our behalf, which will be in the interest of the Scottish people and the Scottish economy.
Tess White.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, NHS Grampian has plunged into further financial crisis, with the board's financial director saying it's struggling to stay afloat. And this morning, a diagnostic report from KPMG said that expenditure has risen by £153 million. That's a 33% increase. NHS Grampian has already the lowest bed base in Scotland. The Cabinet Secretary has failed to get a grip. The strain is intolerable for staff and patients. So please, First Minister, will you meet with the board, who this morning put out a Facebook post and said they have a path to improvement? I don't think so. Will you meet with them urgently to discuss their financial crisis in advance of the winter?
First Minister.
The Government has taken measures in relation to NHS Grampian, and the board is under a very significant level of additional scrutiny as a consequence of the issues that Tess White puts to me. Now, I know the Cabinet Secretary is meeting the board on Monday. I'll wait to get a readout of that report. I'm very happy to engage. I discussed the performance of the National Health Service on a weekly basis with my officials, so I will reflect on the points that Tess White has put to me, but I do assure her that the issues which are important for the delivery of healthcare to the communities in the north east of Scotland is being properly and effectively scrutinised and delivered, and I will ask the Health Secretary to write to her with an update on these issues.
Rhoda Grant.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The First Minister will be aware that the only islander on the board of CMAL has not had his membership renewed. This is a snub to our island communities, who are left yet again with no islander on the board. Can I ask the First Minister what he's going to do to increase the number of islanders on the board of CMAL and ensure that islanders are represented on boards that are crucial to their survival?
First Minister.
As Rhoda Grant will appreciate, the appointment of members to boards is undertaken by a process that's essentially overseen by the ethical standards advisors in this process, and those processes must take their course. However, her point is a substantial point about the necessity for island opinion and island experience to inform the decisions of bodies that are acting on issues that are significantly impacting on island communities. So regardless of board appointments, I would expect CMAL, Caledonian McBrain, Highlands Islands Enterprise, the Crown Estate Scotland, all of these different bodies that have got locus in relation to Nature Scot, all these other bodies have got locus in relation to the issues and experience of islanders, to go to the absolute lengths to make sure they can hear islander opinions, listen to them and address those issues, because they're legitimate issues that have to be taken seriously by all these boards. And although membership cannot perhaps in all circumstances reflect the legitimate aspiration that Rhoda Grant puts to me, boards must listen to islanders and act on their behalf, and I will ensure that's the case.
John Mason.
Thank you very much. We all support the right to protest, assemble and march and so on, and yet at the same time we have the Hate Crime Act, which makes it an offence to stir up hatred. And can the First Minister say that he thinks we have the right balance, or can we get the right balance? Because some groups, for example, Catholic and Irish people, feel threatened by the repeated orange marches in Glasgow, and Jewish people feel threatened by the repeated pro-Palestinian protests.
First Minister.
This is a very sensitive issue, and I have to be careful also here that we're in territory here where Police Scotland have got to make careful judgments about a whole variety of different circumstances which have been long-standing in Scottish society. Some of these issues are more easy to handle than others. But fundamentally, I believe that we have to recognise the right to peaceful, respectful public assembly and freedom of expression. We all enjoy those rights and we're committed to upholding them. However, the right to peaceful assembly and expression should never be used to carry out or justify any form of hateful, violent, intimidating or otherwise criminal behaviour. And any form of hate crime is completely and utterly unacceptable, and the Act that Parliament passed in the Hate Crime and Public Order Act Scotland 2021 includes rigorous safeguards on free speech, and we respect everyone's right to this.
Lorna Slater.
Just 2 weeks ago, our capital city, my hometown, Edinburgh, backed Scottish Green councillors' calls to ensure that no public money is being used to bankroll Israel's genocide. This comes more than a month since our Parliament voted to back our calls for boycott, divestment and sanctions against the genocidal Israeli regime. Will the First Minister tell me what additional legislative changes the Scottish Government will pursue to enable local authorities like Edinburgh to legally adopt the BDS policies this Parliament has agreed to support?
First Minister.
President Officer, I set out to Parliament in my statement on the 3rd of September the actions that are within the competence and responsibility of the Scottish Parliament to take forward. The Government will pursue that agenda to make sure that we fulfil the commitments that I gave to Parliament.
Thank you. Keith Brown.
Thank you, President Officer. This week, as we've heard, the Scottish Government published a fresh start with independence. At a time when many of my constituents are struggling to heat their homes and pay for their food shopping due to Westminster inaction, and bearing in mind the promise to reduce energy bills by £300 has turned into an increase of £200, can the First Minister outline his government's findings on the impact of independence on living standards and energy bills?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the Government's paper that was published yesterday makes clear that there are opportunities that exist for Scotland to improve the living standards of people in Scotland by exercising the powers that come with independence. We were promised in 2014 lower bills, financial security and EU membership, and all of those promises have turned to dust. So this is the time for Scotland to have a fresh start with independence.
Megan Gallagher.
Families of residents at a sheltered housing complex in Falkirk are deeply concerned about plans to outsource care services to an external provider. The proposals, which would remove the round-the-clock care service at Tiggetstog Court, form part of an effort to address the £21 million budget shortfall. Families were not properly consulted, and local councillors have expressed their frustration at the lack of influence over decisions made by the IJB. First Minister, should decisions that directly impact local communities be made by councillors or a majority unelected IJB board?
First Minister.
Well, the arrangements for integrated joint boards have been put in place by statute, which have been considered by Parliament, and it's the responsibility of the integrated joint boards to take those decisions. And there will be members of any relevant local authorities on those boards. There should also, however, be appropriate and adequate consultation with people who are affected by service changes. That's an implicit part in all of the approaches that are taken about any service changes that take place, and I would encourage that to be the case in this circumstance.
Thank you. That concludes First Minister's questions. The next item of business is a member's business debate in the name of Claire Adamson, and there will now be a short suspension to allow those leaving the Chamber and the public gallery to do so.
Thank you. Could I ask those members of the public who are leaving the public gallery, who are of course very welcome in our Parliament, to please do so quickly and quietly, because we are about to go into the next item of business. And the next item of business is a member's business debate on motion 18752 in the name of Claire Adamson on Breast Cancer Now Awareness Day 2025 and Wear It Pink. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put, and I would invite those members who would wish to speak in the debate to please press the request to speak buttons, and I call on Claire Adamson to open the debate. Around 7 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. I'm delighted to be speaking in support of the motion, and I thank all those members of the Parliament who supported the motion to allow it to come to the Chamber today. It's recognising Breast Cancer Now Awareness Day for 2025, which takes place on the 24th of October. I'm also delighted to welcome Ciara McDermott and Jen Hardy from Breast Cancer Now, who are with us in the gallery today, and it's wonderful to have them here to mark this important occasion and recognise the vital work that they do with their colleagues every day, including in this Parliament itself. This day is not just a date in the calendar. It's a day of solidarity, hope and determination in the face of one of the most common and devastating diseases affecting people across Scotland, the UK and the world. We commend the vital and tireless work of Breast Cancer Now, the UK's leading breast cancer research and support charity. Their vision is bold but essential, that by 2050, everyone diagnosed with breast cancer will live and be supported to live well. That's not just a mission statement, it's a call to action for all of us, policymakers, researchers, healthcare workers and communities alike. This work matters because breast cancer affects 1 in 7 women in the UK during their lifetime. My own sister started her journey in January of this year. It also matters to men who are diagnosed, often with less awareness and support. And it matters to the families, friends who work alongside them through diagnosis, treatment, recovery and loss. One of Breast Cancer Now's most important, powerful campaigns is the Wear It Pink. Since 2002, it has raised over £39 million for breast cancer research and care. Each October, people across Scotland and the UK, in schools, workplaces and homes, wear it pink to fundraise and show their support. And many of my colleagues did that last week. But we do ask that you bring the feather boas back. Here in Scotland alone, Wear It Pink has raised over £2.5 million in the past 5 years. That's an extraordinary contribution, and it shows what can be achieved when people come together with hope and determination. Wear It Pink, a simple act, but it sends a powerful message, and we are united in this fight. So I encourage everyone here in the Chamber and beyond to get involved, whether it's a bake sale, dress-up day, or simply a donation. Every action counts. One day, one colour, one powerful message. Presiding Officer, while breast cancer affects people here in Scotland and across the UK, it is also reality faced by millions around the world. Around 4,700 people in Scotland are diagnosed with breast cancer every year. That's more than 12 people every single day. And around 25 men are diagnosed too. Globally, breast cancer is the most common cancer, with over 2.3 million people diagnosed each year and more than 685,000 deaths reported worldwide, according to the World Health Organization. But these figures represent far more than numbers. They reflect the lives, families, friends, colleagues and communities impacted every single day. And this figure reminds us why us gathering to Wear It Pink in the Parliament is so important. We came together in the garden lobby in the Burns room last week to Wear It Pink and show that solidarity with breast cancer now. And it was wonderful to speak to survivors about their journey. This sense of unity, members, advocates, patients and families standing side by side, demonstrates the strength of the campaign and the determination behind it. And we have made progress. Thanks to the investment in research and early detection, the 5-year survival rate is now over 85%. That's something we can be proud of, but it's not the full picture. For those living with secondary breast cancer, where the cancer has spread and is no longer curable, the outlook is still deeply concerning. It's estimated over 1,000 people in Scotland die of breast cancer each year, many of them from secondary cancer. These patients often don't receive the same level of visibility, data collection or specialised care, and that is something we can change. We must shine a stronger light on secondary breast cancer, and that means better data collection, quicker and more accurate diagnosis, increased opportunities for clinical trials and wider access to specialist support. While a cure may not be yet within reach, people living with incurable cancer deserve time, dignity and the best possible quality of life. Presiding Officer, this year's Awareness Day also gives us a moment to remember someone many of us knew, loved and respected, Christina McKelvey, MSP. Christina was more than a colleague, she was a friend to all, a passionate advocate for equality, dignity and justice. She was someone who consistently fought for those who needed a voice and those who found themselves marginalised, disadvantaged and often overlooked. Her voice in this chamber was powerful and her absence is deeply felt. But we honour her legacy by continuing the work she believed so strongly. Breast cancer affects every part of our society across every postcode and background. It impacts women and men, families. It doesn't discriminate, and neither should our efforts to fight it. Let us use Breast Cancer Now Awareness Day not only to raise funds and wear it pink, but to push forward with purpose. Let us continue to invest in research, ensure equal access to care, and raise awareness for those still fighting and those living with secondary cancer. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Ms Adamson. We will now move to the open debate. Backbench speeches of around 4 minutes. I call Marie McNair to be followed by Stephen Kerr. Ms McNair.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I congratulate Claire Adamson, MSP, for securing this very important debate and for all the work she's done in Parliament to raise awareness of breast cancer and the Wear It Pink campaign. I'm pleased to speak in today's debate and pay tribute to my dear friend and beloved colleague, Christina McKelvey. Christina's warmth, kindness and passion for equality drives us all, And in our memory, we must push harder to raise awareness and call for more research to ensure no one loses their lives to breast cancer. Presiding Officer, a few months ago I went for my first breast screening, and I'm not afraid to admit I was a bit nervous and apprehensive about it. However, I didn't need to be, as the wonderful Gillian at the Golden Jubilee Hospital in my hometown of Clydebank put me right at ease from the word go and carried out the mammogram with minimal discomfort. The whole procedure took less than 10 minutes, so I would urge anyone who's called for a screening to go, as it can save your life. It is essential, as 1 in 9 women in Scotland will develop breast cancer. Screening can find breast cancer before you notice any symptoms, and you're more likely to survive if it's found early. Even if you're fit and healthy, it is still so important that you attend and check yourself regularly. Breast cancer is the most common cancer in women in the UK, with a woman diagnosed every 9 minutes and a man every day. Thanks to advances in research and treatment, almost 9 in 10 women survive breast cancer for 5 years or more, with breast cancer survival rates doubling in the past 50 years, and it's estimated that routine screening prevents around 1,300 deaths from breast cancer each year in the UK. In the 1990s, Presiding Officer, more than 1 in 7 people died from breast cancer. Today it's 1 in 20. This is a positive improvement, but more needs to be done. And that is why Breast Cancer Now, where it Pink Initiative is so important, raising millions of pounds for life-saving breast cancer research and care. We need to see more work done to increase awareness of secondary breast cancer, for which there is currently no cure. Currently, around 1,000 women die each month as a result of secondary breast cancer, and I agree with Breast Cancer Now that it is a matter of urgency that we dramatically improve outcomes for those whose cancer has spread. Unfortunately, there are also inequalities in relation to cancer. There are inequalities in the risk factors for breast cancer, the uptake of breast cancer screening and survival rates. Lifestyle factors increase the risk of breast cancer, and Public Health Scotland are clear that each of these factors is socially patterned, with people living in deprived areas more at risk. Women on low incomes are less likely to go for breast cancer screening, and breast cancer survival rates are worse in women from more deprived areas, in part due to the lower uptake of breast cancer screening. Public Health Scotland advised that for the 3-year period 2020 to 2023, women from more deprived areas were less likely to attend breast screening, 64.2% from the most deprived areas, compared to 82.8% in the least deprived areas. This is something I want to see more action on, to ensure everyone can receive a timely diagnosis and treatment to beat breast cancer. My sincere thanks go to Breast Cancer Now for all their amazing work, and to their local coordinator, Kirstine MacDonald, for taking the time to meet with me. In Christina's memory, let us continue to work together to ensure breast cancer no longer takes the lives of those we love. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms McNair. And I call Stephen Kerr to be followed by Jackie Bailey. Mr Kerr.
I would like to be associated with everything that Claire Adamson says in her motion and also in her excellent speech, and recognise Breast Cancer Awareness Now Awareness Day 2025 and commend the vital work of Breast Cancer Now, the UK's leading breast cancer research and support charity, and recognise, as Claire Adamson said, that Wear It Pink is a very effective way of raising awareness. And I am a week late, but I see that the Cabinet Secretary is also wearing pink, but recognise the importance of this campaign and the importance of showing solidarity. Communities demonstrating that they stand with those affected by breast cancer. It's a simple act, but it carries a powerful message of compassion and hope. Presiding Officer, I thank God for the professionalism and compassion of those who treated my wife, Yvonne, when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. No one forgets the moment when those words are spoken. You have cancer. The room falls silent, the world narrows, and your heart sinks with fear for the one you love. In that moment, everything depends on the people around you. And for Yvonne and me, it was the breast screening services team in Glasgow who first told Yvonne, and I will never forget the quiet calm with which they broke the news. There was no panic, no bluntness, no false reassurance, just steady, compassionate professionalism. They explained what the diagnosis meant and what the pathway ahead would look like, treating Yvonne not as a statistic, but as a woman with fears, hopes, and a family who loved her. The consultant surgeon who cared for Yvonne was equally remarkable. With clarity and sensitivity, she guided us through what surgery would involve. Her calm authority, patience, and absolute dedication gave us reassurance at a time of great fear and uncertainty. And after surgery, Yvonne's treatment moved to the Beatson in Glasgow, and I pay the highest tribute to the staff there. They were at the cutting edge of cancer treatment, but what struck me most was their humanity. They did not simply deliver treatment, they cared. They knew Yvonne's name, they asked after her well-being, they invested themselves in her recovery as though she were one of their own. And I saw that same care extended to every patient who walked through those doors. I cannot speak highly enough of them. And to this day, my gratitude is without limit because they gave me my wife, and they gave my wife and I the chance of time together, something never again to be taken for granted. That experience taught me that breast cancer is not borne by the patient alone. It is shared by husbands, wives, children, families, friends. And in that regard, I want to pay a special public tribute to Jo Churchill, the former Member of Parliament for Bury St Edmunds and a two-time cancer survivor. During Yvonne's treatment, Jo's empathy and wisdom was a lifeline to me. Her support reminded me that compassion and solidarity matter almost as much as treatment. But the statistics remain sobering. Around 5,500 are diagnosed in Scotland each year, and 1,000 people die. Too many still wait too long for a diagnosis. Too many lack access to the necessary genomic testing. Secondary breast cancer, for which there is no cure, as was mentioned earlier, still blights lives. We must be ambitious, and that means resourcing our screening programme to achieve the 80% target. It means collecting proper data on secondary breast cancer. It means ensuring access to treatments and testing on the NHS, not just privately. So, in support of the motion and of Claire Adamson's speech, I say, let us wear pink with pride. Let us raise funds. Let us commit to Scotland, ensuring that Scotland leads in research, treatment and care. In doing so, we give hope to those who live with breast cancer today and those who will face it tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr Kerr. And I call Jackie Bailey.
Thank you. Can I start by congratulating Claire Adamson on securing this important debate and commend her for her very thoughtful contribution and, like other colleagues, associate myself with her remarks. Like many others, I come to this debate thinking of Christina McKelvey. Now, I first met Christina when she was a young learning and development officer with social work, working to improve the lives of families in Glasgow. And it was absolutely characteristic of Christina that even before she was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2020, she already supported Breast Cancer Now's Wear It Pink campaign, and she responded to a diagnosis by campaigning even harder to encourage women to regularly check their breasts and attend screening appointments. Sadly, though, breast cancer remains one of the main causes of death in Scotland, and the vast majority of those affected are women. As Marie McNair rightly said, 1 in 9 women in Scotland will develop breast cancer, but they are 5 times more likely to survive it if it's caught early. So yesterday, I had the privilege of chairing a meeting with ATOS Scotland and Breast Cancer Now to discuss what more progress can be made in screening. Uptake in Scotland right now is just over 75%, and that's good. But that still means that 1 in 4 eligible women are missing this vital opportunity. And while around 80% of women from the least deprived fifth of the population take up screening, among the most deprived fifth, it is 65%. So I urged the Scottish Government to publish the cancer deprivation figures last week, and I repeat that call now, because it's only with accurate data that we can target those who need it most effectively. But raising awareness of screening is only part of the picture. For screening to work, we don't only need women coming in the door, we need radiographers to take scans, radiologists to make diagnosis based on the results. It's the whole journey that matters. And I heard earlier this year from the Society of Radiographers, who warned that many of their members are at the point of burnout. Demand for diagnostic radiography has increased by 11% year on year, and there's no equivalent increase in radiographers or their equipment. Meanwhile, the Royal College of Radiologists' latest census found that there was a 25% shortfall of radiologists in Scotland, which is expected to rise to 35% by 2029. Scotland also has the worst shortage of clinical oncologists who treat cancer of any UK nation. Scottish Labour research published earlier this year found that Scottish hospitals are relying on scanners that in many cases are decades old. So we can do so much better. Can I also mention secondary breast cancer? Because there is a new drug to treat secondary breast cancer, which the Scottish Medicines Consortium considered recently, I believe this week. An announcement is expected next week, but we lack the capacity for the type of genetic testing that is required with this drug. This drug is routinely available to women in NHS England. So I plead with the Minister and the Cabinet Secretary to act quickly to ensure that this drug can be used in Scotland if passed by the SMC. In closing, Presiding Officer, the UK Labour Government did deliver a record budget settlement for Scotland, including around £2 billion extra for Scotland's NHS in 25-26. But it's up to the Scottish Government to ensure that this money is invested appropriately. So let me ask them, the Scottish Government, to commit to investing in scanners, to developing a proper workforce plan, so that women who turn up for screening know that if anything is found, they will have the fastest possible route to treatment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bailey. And we now turn to Minister Jenny Minto, who will respond to the debate. Around 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I too would like to begin by expressing my sincere thanks to Claire Adamson for raising this very important motion with Parliament today, and to my fellow MSPs who have all provided meaningful and very thought-provoking contributions to our discussion. I too will associate myself with the motion's commendation of the work of the charity Breast Cancer Now. Breast Cancer Now are active members of the Scottish Cancer Coalition, and I greatly appreciate their contribution to the national conversation on issues in relation to breast cancer, and also the vital work they do to support women living with breast cancer in Scotland. And Claire Adamson and others are right to recognise the support that men living with breast cancer get too. I have met with the charity on a number of occasions since I became Minister for Public Health and Women's Health, and look forward to continuing this important collaboration into the future. I know that the charity published their 5-year strategy at the end of September, and I was pleased to note that we continue to be aligned on our priorities for cancer in the coming years, and that their 3 key themes of earlier diagnosis, care and support, and new treatment echo the ambitions of our 10-year cancer strategy for Scotland, which we published in 2023. I think everyone in the chamber was completely correct, and Stephen Kerr talked about the effective way that Wear It Pink is to raise that awareness, but also the messages of care and hope. This motion has also awarded us the opportunity to mark the important contribution of Christina McKelvey.
Keith Brown.
Apologies if I preempted the Minister's next remarks, but just to say that, first of all, I would commend the Scottish Government for approving the drug Inhertu, which is not approved elsewhere in the UK, for which there are campaigns to try and have that available elsewhere. And also just to say, when she mentions about Wear It Pink, and Stephen Kerr said this as well, just to let the select band of members in the Chamber know that next year on the 4th of April there will be an event, Wear It Pink for Christina, which will continue, I think, 10 to 15 years that Christina hosted Wear It Pink in the Parliament. And it will be available. It's not an SNP event, it's available to, if you can get a ticket, to everyone. And that will continue. The money from that will go in part to breast cancer now, just to bring it to the attention of the Minister and members.
Minister.
I thank Keith Brown for that contribution, and I do hope I'll be able to get a ticket for that. So thank you. As I was saying, the motion has also awarded us the opportunity to mark the important contribution of our dear friend and colleague, Christina McKelvey, to amplify the voices of women with breast cancer in Scotland. We had a very powerful motion of condolence earlier this year for Christina. For me, Christina represented the heart and soul of our party. Her determination to make Scotland a better place to live for the generations to come, and her passion to see Scotland thrive as an independent nation, meant she dictated her life to encouraging others to speak up and speak out for what is right. She championed so many important causes and was the epitome of what progressive politics should look like. The first time I saw Christina McKelvey speak, I remember thinking to myself, who is this amazing woman? She was full of energy. She spoke with such passion. She owned the room, and simply she held everyone in the palm of her hand. Her demeanour was infectious, and her presence will be forever missed in this chamber. Her focus on supporting minorities and women should be applauded, and her particular focus on women's health meant she was a passionate advocate on all issues in relation to breast cancer, and she had been so, as others have said, before her personal diagnosis. Christina was committed to ensuring women regularly checked their breasts and were aware of signs and symptoms of breast cancer, as well as encouraging all eligible women to attend their appointments at her national breast screening programme. And I'd like to thank Marie McNair for emphasising the importance of that in her contribution. I'm really pleased to be here today to outline just some of the Scottish Government's current actions which we are working on to continue Christina's important legacy in this issue. As others have said,
Claire Adamson.
Thank the Minister for taking the intervention, and I appreciate she's moving on to say what is happening. I just wanted to remember on record that one of the first things that Christina did following her diagnosis was to have the protocols changed about age. I was a couple of months older than Christina. She never let me forget it. but because of the cycle of when people were called, I actually had my first breast cancer screening test 3 years before Christina did, and she changed that to ensure that every woman in their 50th year would have that. Thank you.
Minister.
Claire Adamson raises an incredibly important point there about Christina McKelvey's focus on doing the right thing. So I thank Claire Adamson for mentioning that. We know that 1 in 9 women living in Scotland will develop breast cancer at some stage in their life. Breast cancer is the second most common cancer in Scotland and the most common cancer detected in females. Importantly, however, due to improved detection and in treatment options, survival has significantly increased over the last 30 years. Women are 5 times more likely to survive breast cancer if it's caught early, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't stop looking at what new ways we can work, as Claire Adamson just highlighted there. We know that earlier diagnosis is vital. It's why we continue to invest in our Detect Cancer Earlier programme, which encompasses primary care, diagnostics, public education, data, innovation and screening. The programme works closely with the Scottish Cancer Coalition, including Breast Cancer Now, to support awareness-raising efforts and uses social media channels to promote joint content and messaging where possible. Our Be the Early Bird campaign, launched in March 2023, aims to reduce the fear of cancer and empower those with possible symptoms to act early. It has since rerun several times over the last 3 years, specifically targeting at those aged 40+ from areas of deprivation. We're also committed to ensuring that those women who are diagnosed with breast cancer receive the best possible treatment and support. Our strategy has a range of measures aimed at benefiting all those living with cancer, including implementation of a single point of contact to support patients throughout their journey and after discharge. And it was heartening to hear Stephen Kerr's and his wife's experience in the Beatson and previously throughout your wife's treatment. In Scotland, we're proud of our national breast cancer screening programme. All women aged 50 to 70 are invited every 3 years for breast screening, and women over 71 can request an appointment if it has been more than 3 years since her last appointment. My officials are also working with Screening Oversight and Assurance Scotland to implement the recommendations from their breast screening modernisation report, which was submitted earlier this year. The final report will be published in the coming weeks. Christina McKelvey also championed the importance of improving data collection for metastatic breast cancer in Scotland. She shone that light that Claire Adamson mentioned. I also appreciate this is an important issue for breast cancer now, and patients including Jen and Alison, who I was so pleased to meet last Thursday on Wear It Pink Day. In our Cancer Action Plan, we committed to improving data collection for metastatic cancers, starting this process with breast cancer. My officials, along with colleagues in Public Health Scotland, are currently undertaking a thorough review of our options in relation to collecting data on secondary breast cancer in Scotland, taking consideration of clinical time required and how it can be used to improve services. My officials are expecting advice from Public Health Scotland imminently, and following receipt of this, our aim is to agree the best method of data collection by the completion of our Cancer Action Plan in 2026. And I note the points that Jackie Bailey made around the SMC deliberations, and will take that away. I'll finish now by reiterating my thanks to Claire Adamson and all my colleagues for their contributions today, and also to Breast Cancer Now and all the other organisations who provide vital support to women and men living with breast cancer in Scotland. Together, we must build on that legacy of Christine McKelvey and the many other women who have lived with breast cancer.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes the debate, and I suspend this meeting until 2 p.m. Thank you.